Are CDs back? To me, that sounds similar to the question, are books back? In that they never really left. Maybe CDs eventually will, but I really hope not. Now, physical books are invaluable, even with the dump of information everywhere. I know CDs don't carry the same weight as books, but let me tell you why my experience with this CD player had me repurchasing CDs again, and why I think you should consider it if you haven't yet. Welcome to Project Beats. My name is Jovan. If you're new, I'm just a studio guy with an ending interest in gear, mostly in studio context. Today's a little bit different, and before we dive in, big thanks to Fosi Audio for sending out the Merak CD player and the IM4 open back IEM bundle. No money changed hands, they don't get to preview this video, and all opinions are my own. Today's going to be an interesting one, but just to preface this video, as mentioned, my POV is of a studio guy. I don't have a collection of CDs anymore. I work more in the process of the music making than enjoying them. Although, to be honest, lately it's half and half, given that I review quite a bit more than I produce. But I will say this, while testing and creating this video, I am convinced I need to repurchase my previous CDs and add a few more. For my current setup, I stream high-res lossless. I didn't think I needed a CD player in 2026, but testing this changed my mind about owning physical music again. Let me go through the things that stood out for me about the Merak CD player and the IM4 earbuds first. And in the interest of time, here are the specs on screen, the buttons, and the I/O. Some of the things that I have noticed so far, it's mainly designed for desktop use. So, if you're thinking of something mobile, here are a few things I found. The lid opens up so easily, there isn't any lock. The good thing is, it holds up in place for easy CD load in. But at a specific angle, this will just drop close or easily open. Another thing is, this doesn't have internal battery, though you can easily power it with a USB-C power bank. This has ESP or electronic shock protection for like light bumps and whatnot. But if you have it on a secure table, I think it's best to turn that off for pure sonic performance. So while it's not impossible to use as a mobile device, I would say this is more a transportable unit than mobile unit. But it's really meant for desktop use. This volume slider on the side, which at first I thought was some sort of lid mechanism or cover lock, takes a bit of getting used to. You can jump volume quickly, but if you want granular control, you would need to slide slower. Though sometimes it jumps about 2 to 3 volume levels. Just something to note, not really a big deal breaker for me. Now for sound quality, it has Cirrus Logic internal DAC, and I am honestly impressed. Headphone out was good, and for this testing, I was using the IM4 open back earbuds. I have zero complaints. I thought it was transparent enough, no huge coloration or anything significantly bad that I can notice right up front. It's clear, it's engaging, and I actually like it. You can bypass the internal DAC when using the optical out. I tried connecting it to my RME ADI2 to my monitors, which worked really well. If you have a better signal chain, this is a nice addition for physical CD music playback. For how much this package cost, I am actually impressed. The USB-A is interesting. A couple of things. You can rip your CD into the USB thumb drive as a bit-perfect lossless copy if you need a digital copy of your CDs for whatever you need it for. No computer required. The other unique feature is that same USB port can play high-res lossless, so you aren't limited to CD playback. I was able to play 24-bit 96K tracks and FLAC tracks. Your thumb drive needs to be on FAT32 format, and there is a limitation on like song order. And what I mean is you can't see the titles of what you're playing. You can jump tracks using the remote, which comes with a bundle, but say you want to jump to the third song in the third folder in your thumb drive, then you are kind of guessing the track number. So navigation is a little bit tricky. You have to come up with your own system. If there's like a folder tree display and title name display, then that would be nice. So yeah, it plays high-res files on FAT32 thumb drive, not exFAT. I tried using it on exFAT drive and I was getting errors. But without the screen to show the folder trees, navigating hundreds of files blindly can be frustrating. So keep that in mind. I personally would like a vinyl record collection, but I don't have the space for it at the moment, so this is perfect for me. It just sits on my desk, taking up very little space. I'm actually pretty happy with it. Now let me talk about why I honestly enjoyed listening to music this way. If I'm honest, at first I was like, who uses a CD anymore? Like, is this still a thing? For one, I am really set on my DACs and amps and high-res lossless streaming and all that. Then I saw one of my students carrying a portable CD player. She was saying she enjoys it a lot. And apparently there's a new wave of younger generation that consumes music this way. And I thought that was really nice. The first time I unboxed the Merak and played a CD for the first time in like forever, seeing that CD spin immediately took me back to the 2000s. Tower Records Makati, Philippines, a part of my past that I have already forgotten. Back then, owning your music was special, something you are proud of, you show off to your friends and whatnot. Unlike today, where everyone has access to any music at any given time, and just about anyone can make music with just prompts. But that's a talk for another video. All that kind of took away the thing that makes owning and collecting music special. But again, that's just me. My first record was Room for Squares by John Mayer. I was learning to play his songs by ear, and I broke that CD player, hitting rewind and play 100 times. But if you know John Mayer songs, I had no chance, of course. Obviously, this time around, I had to get some John Mayer tracks again. I'm a fan of how well they produce music, the tone, the mix, dynamics, and the production. It's a good reference for mixing as well, IMHO. Here are the 3 reasons why I want back in on the CD game. First is ownership, or you can say true ownership. If you've heard about the big Sony PlayStation announcement, which is a kind of big argument nowadays, at least at the time of filming, then owning CDs is somewhat more appealing. This way you actually own the music physically, not in the cloud, no outage, and no system down or anything like that. The only thing that will take it away from you is if you broke the CD or if you lost it. Here's another thing, not always, but there will be albums like Herbie Hancock's Possibilities, where on Apple Music, there are some tracks that aren't available to me because of original issues. If you have the physical record, you have the entire album. None of those BS, and I mean bureaucratic stuff. Plus, the version you own remains the same for years. No surprise remasters, algorithmic changes overnight, and maybe library ownership transfers where you might lose your music. Second is mastering. Now this, I think, is underrated. With the loudness wars and all that, some of the old mastering, in my opinion, has a little bit more dynamic headroom. Again, of course, it's preference, and it's not always like this, but for CD quality lossless music, there are albums that were mastered beautifully. Depending on the release version, of course, CDs would preserve that mastering when it was released. They don't suddenly change because of high-res compliance or Dolby remasters or whatnot. For this testing, I compared Herbie's Possibilities album, CD versus Apple Lossless. The CD was released around 2005, then Apple Lossless introduced about 2021. Here's a hot take. I like the CD more. You can argue they are the same, and 24-bit has more headroom and is technically cleaner. To me, the CD version edges out the remastered version of Apple Music. There's a little bit more of everything. It's not a really big difference, but it is a difference. Of course, this is subjective, but to my ears, there was a bit more dynamics there. The kicks were a bit more punchy and alive. Apple Lossless doesn't sound bad, of course. Just to my ears, it's a little subdued when comparing it back to back. Instruments were a bit more spaced out. The top end doesn't feel choked. The entire album has a little bit more headroom, more breathing room on the top end. It feels less cramped and less compressed compared to Apple Music. The top end on Apple Music was a bit piercing to my ears, and it feels more compressed. Of course, that's my personal preference and impression. Again, it's not by a mile, but every little bit of those aspects combined made me realize I'm missing out on all those things. These are subtle differences that I feel you only hear when comparing them side by side. If you want to know the signal chain I used for this comparison, for the Apple Music, I was listening through my Chord Mojo 2, which in itself is an unfair fight against the Merak. I did also use the Merak optical out to the Mojo 2, and I still prefer the CD copy more. Again, that's not to say Apple Music is bad, it's just my preference. Another point is you have consistency. Streaming might change without you knowing. Remaster here and there or what have you. CDs that you own will remain the same for years on end, given of course you take care of it. Third reason is physical experience. Physically collecting records for me has some appeal to it. Even in my tight studio space, I wouldn't mind having a few more CDs around. The booklet, the artwork, the lyrics, the effort they go through to have all these in the music you bought, kind of special and nostalgic to me. You don't really get that in streaming. Some of the records I mixed, played, and produced, the credits sometimes don't show up on like Spotify or Apple Music info. But you will see all that in the booklet that the CDs or tapes come with. Who was part of the records, the credits, and all of those. Which is of course very nice to have. Another thing is CDs are great value today. There are tons of used stores and new ones. And the experience of going through piles and piles of records to find the ones you want is an adventure in itself. Another thing is it's offline. It's there when you need it. It won't have server downtime, app updates, and all that. And lastly, CDs are still lossless. It's not high-res lossless, but still lossless audio. Some would argue it's the start of which average users can tell the difference from CD quality to high-res lossless. Now, let's move on to the IM4 open-back earbuds.
After spending some time with these IEMs, I came away pretty impressed. Out of the box, I think they'd benefit from a little EQ. I'd personally lift the mids slightly just to bring out the vocals and instruments forward. The open back design doesn't feel like an open back headphone. Instead, it seems to act more like a pressure relief system, which makes them very comfortable for long listening sessions. At the same time, the isolation is surprisingly good, with better passive noise cancellation than I expected. They sound good straight from a phone or laptop, but pairing them with an amplifier definitely makes the listening experience more enjoyable. For studio use, I think these would make a really good set of tracking IEMs. The drums never felt harsh and the backing tracks remain clear and easy to follow. I even wore them while teaching drums to see how well they handle the sound of a live drum kit. They retained the character of the drums without the harshness, and the passive sound rejection was good enough that everything stayed comfortable to listen to, even in a louder environment. I even tried them during my commute. They blocked out conversations around me quite well. You can still hear train rumbles and announcements, but they are not distracting enough. Sound-wise, these lean toward the bass-heavy side. On some tracks, the bass can get a little muddy. I really enjoyed listening to Amelie by Lil Wayne and Marcus Miller's I'll Be There, which showcased the bass beautifully. Overall, if you're just getting into IEMs, I think these are a great place to start. They definitely won't disappoint.
First impressions, I thought this sounded really good. Not just for the price, I actually liked how these sounds. Granted, they are not reference level in any way. They lean more on the warm side, more of a fun listen. I tried it with the balance tips, and personally, I wouldn't dare go bass or more bass ear tips. The balance tips is where I stop because this is plenty low end for me. Inside this lightweight 7-gram CNC machined aluminum shells, Fosi packed a 10mm beryllium coated dynamic driver with a dual chamber acoustic design. That beryllium coating gives it that top end clarity and speed, while that open back vents reduce internal pressure, giving it that wider soundstage and punchy low end that breathes. To me, that open back feature is more of just a removal of that occlusion effect where you feel claustrophobic and the music feels really in your head. None of that feeling at all. But it's not the same as the open back headphones where you can hear loud things around you somewhat clearly. I use the IM4 right beside my drum students who are playing really loud and I don't have any problems. So there is definitely isolation there. I tried tracking drums with it and they are really fun. I can hear the ambient sound of the drums. There is some response and feedback there, which is of course a really fun tracking experience. Not quite the jam mode on the Zildjian Alchemy headphones, but close enough. I can imagine this will be good for vocal tracking as well. Also for stage monitoring. I can see this working really well. You won't need to struggle with gain or bringing in some mic'd ambient sound because some of us old heads like to hear the stage still and what's happening around. And you get a little bit of that here with this earbuds. I also tried commuting with the IM4 on the train. I get crisp audio music playback and still somewhat aware of my surroundings. The noise around you won't ruin the audio quality. I actually still enjoy the music while commuting and I wouldn't be searching for a noise cancelling feature because the seal and isolation for me is good enough. I still wouldn't recommend like crossing the streets and being too engrossed on your phone. That's still dangerous. But yeah, as far as my subjective impressions, the tuning on this is super fun for daily use, casual listening, tracking, or monitoring. Of course, I won't use this for mixing or anything like that. It's really not meant for that. But for monitoring, this can work. This comes with a brass bore fitting, which I prefer because it opens up the top end a bit more. Though sometimes the top end on the brass bore is a little hot. I might need to EQ that top end just by a tiny bit. For monitoring use case, I'd like a little bit more upper mids, but as it is, it will work just fine. Also, one tip is if you're tracking on drums or if you're moving a lot and you want to use this for monitoring, I use the ASLA ear tips as it grips to my ear more. It doesn't fall out even with my excessive movement on the drums. And it doesn't destroy the tuning and dynamics like most memory foam does. Casual listening is a big W for me. If you are new to IEMs, this will be seriously impressive. I would actually recommend this more than the basic Soundbrenner monitoring IEM. You get way more for your money. The Fosi IM4 is cheaper at standard retail, even more when it's on sale. It has better mids, way tighter low end that isn't muddy at all, and a better standard cable where you can choose balanced terminals right from the get-go. Compared to cheap Chi-Fi earbuds that I have tried before, this doesn't get me that ear fatigue on the top end. Also, without that occlusion effect, this is a great entry earbuds. As for my final thoughts of this bundle, I like that the Merak is easy to use, it works well, and sounds surprisingly good. This took me back to slowing down and listening to an entire album the way it used to be. Kinda like a book that you read from top to bottom. Gapless playback for those albums that were intended to be enjoyed that way. This will be great. This CD player reminded me of all those things that don't exist in the current landscape anymore. Nowadays, it's all about singles, 2-minute songs that you can cycle through quickly so it counts as another stream playback. This slows you down, which I actually like. Everything takes a bit more time. Pausing the music, next song, no scrubbing of course. All of that takes a little bit more time than the instantaneous play, next song, and scrubbing that we experience today. Of course, with this style of listening, you are meant to slow down, sit, and enjoy your music. I think this bundle is really solid, a great performer at a great price point. No major downsides I can really speak of, especially at this price point. If you have a chance, do audition it first and see if you like it. Thanks for watching. You can find all the links and other info in the description. Do consider subscribing and see you all in the next project.